Hi Rahul, thanks for having me. Yeah, let's happen. So, as a site reliability engineer, to start with, when I was a tractor, it was more around managing infrastructure. Like when people typically think managing infra, they just think, hey, these folks would be just spinning those things up. But to be honest, it's much more than that. So it's not just about spinning up the infrastructure, but rather ensuring that even if the scale, like even if you see a massive surge of requests, your API servers, database servers, nothing goes down, you have the right set of alerting, monitoring, and all. Network congestion is not there. Infrastructure, like you pick the right set of infrastructure components to support your load. More often than not, all sorts of high level architecture typically is also reviewed by SRE just to ensure that everything is done well, right? So there are quite a few things, but to summarize it, there are typically three major verticals that an SR engineer operates on. First one is to maintain the overall availability of the infrastructure. Second, to ensure the developer productivity is high enough. So this leads around building internal tools that makes life of a developer simpler. And the third one is around maintaining infrastructure security, like just to ensure that no external attacker or hacker can go into our infra. All infra is made secure by putting in the right set of NACL rules to block unauthorized accesses to our infra. So these are the three major verticals that every SR engineer would be working on in some or the other way. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So SRE is a horizontal team in the organization, and there is a massive breadth to it. And given the kind of breadth that SRE team in general owns, so like every engineer is supposed to know all of this, but obviously it is not possible to do it in a very short time. With experience, you will get exposure to every single one of these things. But in a team structure like this, let's say there are six SR engineers, two might be experts in managing infra, two might be experts in managing developer productivity, two might be experts in doing infrastructure security. Right. And then there will always be some sort of cross-pollination between them, helping them to, do to have a cross-functional knowledge as well. So, but it would always start with one responsibility, and then you will slowly transition into another, basically getting a peek of who what does.
Okay, okay. Oh, okay. Uh, so thank you so much for that answer. Let's get with another question, I guess. I'll also see from the stream. Let me share the link with you also. Yeah. So since you're working in this field for a very long time, what are your suggestions and advice for new coming students as like who wants to be an SRE, or maybe people who are working in industry and they want to work as an SRE?
No matter what, always spend 1 year doing SRE at least in your
Okay.
career. You will learn so much about the C. Writing CRUD, putting in database, getting it out is easy. You also need to learn how those things are actually, what happens at scale, what kind of parameters do you tune, what kind of, when you work as an SRE, you
Yeah.
get to know all the things around OS fundamentals, networking essentials, and whatnot to just mitigate that issue. You're always in that tense situation. Ki, Arey, the website is down. Let me fix it. You'll find the hackiest way to get your website up and running. And those kind of learnings is something that you'll never get. Never, to be real honest, never get when you're working as an SD. Because SD is more like building features and all. And building features is mostly around putting data into database and getting it efficiently. there are challenges on that front, but when it comes to truly building scalable architecture, that kind of exposure you'll get when you work as an SRE, because you'll have to deal with so many components at once, that how does that communication happen, what kind of choking would happen. You'd actually see the importance of doing capacity planning. Like, hey, if I was able to support 100 requests on one server, how would I support 2000 requests? Like, that's basically 20x jump. And let's say there is a big marketing campaign push on your organization, you'll see a high surge of users without letting application team even getting affected. The SRE team is the first line of defense who handles
Exactly.
that kind of search with capacity planning and whatnot.
Yes.
So that kind of experience is really essential if you'd ever want to go into building massively scalable systems. So at
Right.
least 1 year experience in SRE should be a mandate. I don't know why, but well, basic people don't do it. But to be real, that has shaped my career for the best.
Okay. Thank you so much for that answer.
Yeah.
So, what was your personal inspiration? Like, I can see you were SD before, and then you shifted to SRE. And
Hmm.
another question would be like, what are the major difference between these two roles, and are there any pros and cons for SRE?
No, no. So my case is pretty different. I always like the role that I pick is something that I've never done before.
Okay.
So I job like fresh out of my master. So basically before masters, I worked for a company for a year. There I was writing, basically there I was building application in Java. It was more like a user facing app. Then I did my masters. Then I joined DShaw in financial domain. Got bored in a month and a half. Then moved to Practo. While I was moving to Practo,
Okay.
I like I thought ki chalo DevOps I'll do.
Okay.
I up until then I never logged into a server ever. I never started my own web server. It
Okay.
was 2015, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
But I basically took it as a challenge because I was
Mm-hmm.
basically curious as hell. So I just took it as a challenge and said, "Ki, chalo, let's try to survive this and learn as much as I can." So that's how I got into SRE. And then after that, I moved into Amazon into building building massively scalable data pipelines that transfers data from one place to another. That was a challenge on its own. Then I moved to an academy working on search. So something that I never done before, but just because I want to, like as an engineer, I'm like really curious, want to understand, like want to cover as much as I can in my span, and that's what I've been optimizing it for. So the pros and cons around SD versus SRE. SDs are typically given a known situation. This is a product spec. This is what you have to build.
Right.
SRE, there is nothing like this. SRE, there is
Exactly.
a massive surge and you don't know what to
Mm-hmm.
do. You have to figure it out on your own on how to get your database up and running as soon as possible, how to
Yeah.
get your application service up and running as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because so much of breadth is near impossible for anyone to cover.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn as you go.
True.
SDK, you can have a fixed curriculum, then you are at least 50-60% ready. With SRE, there is no thing for readiness. Like you have to learn Kubernetes also, AWS also, GCP also, infra security also, developer productivity, building internal tools, CRUD, so many things.
Ocean.
So
It's just ocean.
basically, there is no fixed curriculum that you can follow. It has its own set of advantages that hey, you'll get to explore so many things. Has
Yeah.
its own disadvantages where you cannot go into depth of one for let's say 5 or 6 years. You'll just be covering a lot of breadth and not going into depth. But with time, you'll start be a master of a vertical within SRE as well. But that's that
True.
that's very interesting of a challenge that comes
Exactly.
in with SRE.
True. True. So I was also talking about this on my LinkedIn post, since I say that if people want to play Sherlock Holmes, they can become an SRE in tech field, right? Is it is it
Yeah,
true?
yeah, tell me about it. It's like so many times, like just finding out. Like
Yeah.
one very interesting thing happened a few months back. Infrastructure suddenly went down. No one knew why. No code deployment was done.
Exactly.
Then somehow we figured out ki, oh my god, about a month back there was a code which was deployed who had a
Hmm.
switch on it. That flag was suddenly turned on. It was a database configuration and it took down
Yeah.
the website because that code was not tested.
Right.
Finding that out took us 45 minutes ki, because no deployment was done. Now how would we even start? Right.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
very interesting things
Very
happen
interesting. Yeah.
when you're SRE. Yeah.
I'll take one question from my Google form now. So they are asking. His name is Razat. He's a student. So he's asking how is work-life balance in SRE role, since this role also requires frequent on calls.
Never be shy of on calls.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of students, a lot of not just students, a lot of people shying away from on calls. Hey,
Yeah.
I don't want to wake up late in the
Mm.
night. But to be really honest, if you are on call, that's the time you learn the most.
Right.
Otherwise, you are just writing crud.
Right.
But when you are on call, you don't know what kind of things will come at you. It is always a surprise. Ki, Arey, database is down. Arey, your
Mm.
like for example, if you are using GitHub as like like right now, very recently GitHub had an outage. So at that time, all of the deployments started failing. The person who was on call at that time would have learned that so much. He even Git, like you are using GitHub as assuming that that is reliable as hell, but it is
Mm.
not. When that goes down, your deployment is suffering, right? Assume that like that time your a few servers had new version of your code while others had an old version of your code. How would you deal that with that situation? So it's tense, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
tense when outages happen, but that's what it's about learning. You should throw yourself into uncomfortable
Yeah, I
situations
guess.
and then swim the ocean
Yeah.
per se. So that's the best way to learn. Work-life balance is it's there. It's not that it's not there, but
Yeah.
be on call, learn. You learn the most when you're on call. So don't shy away just because it's on call. You don't want to wake, because if you are wake, if you woke, if you stayed awake for the entire night, no one's going to ask you to work on the next day. You
Exactly.
can take the day off, right?
Yeah.
So work-life balance might be a little skewed on one end, and that does not happen every day, but
Yeah.
it's not as bad as what people portray. It's pretty decent, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on this point. And I also have seen like with many students, on this. I also saw your LinkedIn post that do not skip CS fundamentals, what it has been taught in your college, right? Like the college degree
Yeah,
is not
yeah,
useless. And this has been
it's
become
not.
trend, like just get the shortcut, get inside a company and start working. And I have seen like many people who are good at DSL go and they're not good at good CS fundamentals. They go work in company and they just don't figure out what's happening here, and they just quit it and start
It
teaching
will
them
take
this
them
one.
4 years to realize. It will take them 4 years to realize that the things that they talk about scaling, the things that they talk about
Mhm.
concurrence handling, that they all studied in their
In
bachelor's
the
degree.
Yeah.
Like in my course, when I tell them, yesterday I was explaining them, like we built our own load balancer from scratch,
Hmm.
not just high level design, but also low level design. When I went into the low level design part of it, I told them about system calls, network blocking, those basic OS fundamentals that we studied in the Galvin book. And then people said, "Kare, we all have studied this part."
Yeah.
But the things that you have studied is always put in practice. So
Hmm.
never think that college subjects like OS, database,
Exactly.
networking, computer architecture are not useful. They
Yeah.
are pretty useful.
Pretty
It
useful.
will take 10 years. Rather, it's like fundamentals are all there in college, but for an engineer, it would take him or her 10 years to realize that they studied all of the scaling tick, everything requires scaling and all in their college itself. It
Exactly.
just takes them time to
Exactly.
realize
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
never skip your college
True.
subjects. They are more important than anything else.
Yeah. I did the same thing in one of my video like AMS sessions. So I just connected all of the computer science subjects in just C++ code, right? From compiler to
Yeah,
assembly language to
yeah, yeah,
microprocessor to interrupts. Why interrupts happen when you do the scan of everything. So it's really interesting. Like when you just connect everything, all the subjects that you studied in your computer science, then it makes sense. Like why did you study computer science, right?
exactly, exactly.
Let's go with the live question now. So Raihan asked, what are the best way to prepare for SRE? So many things to cover. Different companies have different process. Like any points would you like to suggest?
And SRE is basic. SRE is just super wide. You can't
Yeah.
cover them all, to be honest. So you need to know a bit of everything, to be honest. Thoda,
Mhm.
not to a very depth. Obviously, it's not possible to do that
Mhm.
when you are just stepping out of your college. But try to cover as much as you can with respect to, like, let's say how a microservice is built, you know how to connect to a database, you know how to scale up a database on a cloud, let's say AWS, GCP or something. That's more than enough for you to know the basic infrastructure plumbing thing. Then know a little bit of infrastructure security, like how do you prevent an unauthorized access by blocking a particular port in your cloud infrastructure. Even that sort of basic is more than enough for you to, to basically connect the dots. Then maybe something around cost optimization, something around how big your server could be, how big your database is. Just the basics of that is good enough for you to get into a company.
Right.
And then obviously while you join that company, you learn quite a bit depending on the tech stack they have, depending on the infra they have, depending on the practices they have. But as a starting point, this is more than enough.
Mhm. Yep. There's another question from Sanket. He says, how much system design we need for SRE role for the FANG interview? Interesting.
I don't know. SRE role at bank, I don't know
Yeah.
what kind of interview practices are there. To be
Yeah.
realistic, like it does not matter.
Yeah.
System design is all about fundamentals.
Hmm.
Really, it's all about nailing your fundamentals.
Yeah.
Like if you are just starting out of your college, don't think too much about
Hmm.
SRE at this thing, because typically when you like the stupidest thing about FANG companies in general is you are hired for the company, not for the role. That's the
Hmm.
worst part of it. You don't know which team you are going to be part of unless it's a very specific requirement that the recruiter has been handed.
Right.
Right. So you'd never know which team are you going to be part of. Like you may interview with best DS Algo and work in an iOS team, which just requires you to work on an iOS app and has nothing to do with data structures and algorithms or
Right.
or in general backend engineering. Right. So you typically don't know. If you definitely know, somehow you know that you are being interviewed for an SRE role in a big company and you are just number one, just stepping out of your college, then
Yeah.
basic system design that you see on YouTube videos is more than enough to get you covered. If you are an
Right.
experienced person, then your domain expertise, your on-field experiences is what really matters, because that would shape your system design skills in general. Because basics though, if you are experienced, basics though is 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 a piece of cake for you, right? But when it comes to advanced, that would only come from your on-field experience that you get. Array, all sorts of firefighting situation and all.
Hmm.
That's much more important.
Yeah. There's another question from Google Form. Person's name is Narayan Desai, and he is not a student. I think he's a professional.
Hmm.
So he'll ask. So it's almost established that Google has two branches of SREs, one in SWE SRE and SE SRE. What is the difference in
Hmm.
their responsibilities and interview structure?
I don't know about interview structure to be honest,
Yeah.
but with SRE, like in a startup when they first established, like I established the entire SRE team over here at an academy.
Mhm.
So because we were just setting up, so everyone knows everything. But as company scales up, you would have, like as I said, few set of people expert in a few set of domains. For example, around infrastructure and infrastructure security, I'll have a sub team that does that. I might have other team that just takes care about developer productivity and ensuring that the microservices that they push, they are optimal with respect to their systems, with respect to their architecture and all. So typically these two kind of segregation you would see, and as company even scale up, you would see sub teams within them being filled, and they just give fancy names like
Yeah.
SWSRE and SSRE, something like
Yeah.
that. But the idea is the four verticals of SRE still remains the constant, where you would get a basic understanding of all, and then as a specialization, you will pick one over 5 years or something.
Exactly. There's this fancy question like people ask about like what is the difference between DevOps and SRE, right? And there are other fancy words now as well. Like when we're talking about fancy naming of SREs, so people are calling MLOps and something like that. So are these related somehow or what?
Yeah. So at the end, like it's just about, as I said, company grew up, people with specialized on something, they just take their role. Startup
Mhm.
pay, everything is one. You just have one SRE team that does everything, right? But typically you see SRE is something that is more closer to infrastructure side. DevOps is more closer towards the developer side of things,
Right.
right? MLOps is infrastructure for purely machine learning domain. That's what is
Mm-hmm.
all MLOps about,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there is a very strong correlation. Like MLOps can be, MLOps is basically DevOps for machine learning teams, and infrastructure for machine learning teams becomes MLOps,
Sure.
right? So SRE is purely like in a big org. SRE is the one who only takes care about infrastructure scaling part of it. Like basically, if they have an on-prem infra, then literally doing the network congestion, viral and all that part. Pura. MLOps is more specialized towards giving the best experience to their ML teams and supporting them on their infrastructure. Because like,
Mm.
as you know, ML has like deep learning models, massive machine learning models. It requires its own set of specialized infrastructure. For example, to run their massive Jupyter notebooks, to run their deep learning models on, let's say, GPUs, helping them provisioning that, helping them building those massive data pipelines to move data, ingest data, and all. That is what ML ops would do.
True.
While DevOps is typically for a normal microservices based team, DevOps will be the one who would ensure that all other teams have right set of tooling and all
Yeah.
to like their main role would be to improve efficiency of your developers by building a lot of internal tools that deals with infrastructure partners. So DevOps
Exactly.
typically abstracts out infrastructure complexities from your developers while giving them a very smoother experience to
Mm.
use that.
Right.
For example, one-click setup of your like basically one-click deployment of your microservice, part of DevOps.
Yeah.
One-click spin up your infrastructure, part of DevOps.
Exactly.
That sort of stuff.
Yeah. What we say like Jenkins, Kubernetes, and all these kind of tools have been developed by these people who are dealing with deploying stuff like the end part of software engineering life cycle, not the starting point of starting point of the software engineering life cycle. So you can see the examples in the world already that these are the like tools that have been developed to make things automated, right?
Yep.
True. So let's talk about your work here. Right now, you have been doing a lot of interesting things. I have seen on your blogs, on LinkedIn posts, and on Twitter as well. You say truth bombs. You drop all the time.
Yeah.
So I have seen your essays and the LinkedIn post where you talk about tech internals. I recently saw you have been talking about writing yourself a Git in your own by your own in Golang. So my question
Yeah.
is, why do you are doing this? Like these tools are already available in the market, and since why to have all this? I mean, starting from scratch,
my
dealing with all
my
this
idea,
problem.
yeah, got it. But my idea here is a little different. Like, I don't want to be someone who is just using something that basically someone has built. For example, if you see in India, we have this thing that we know how to use React, we know how to use Vue. Have you ever thought of building our own React? Why is innovation not coming out of India? We have a mass engineers,
Mhm.
huge set of engineers. Innovation is not coming out of India.
Mhm.
Like, no one's thinking of building their own language. Why?
Mhm.
People forking out things like out of React just for fun, but never thinking. But one revolutionary framework coming out of India. There are few, to be honest, but not like the kind of tech population we have. Please don't do this part. So that's where this is my attempt towards understanding the nuances of it, so that if in future when I would want to start something, like maybe because if I don't know the internals of it, let's say who has ever built their own load balancer? Do people even think of building that? They use Nginx. Why has someone not tried to build something from scratch? Because when you build something from scratch, when you even attempt, you might find a place that you can optimize.
Mm.
Git
Understood.
is not Git is not flawless. Git has its own flaws. If I build my own Git, I understand how Git works. It would be easier for me to optimize it if required. Correct?
Understood. Yeah.
It's that is one of the reasons why I go into internals of everything. So that if in future if I would ever want to spot an optimization, or if I can ever build a framework that is better than it, I should be in the position, because if I don't know, then I would never even imagine of building this. I went into C Python source code so
Mm.
that because I always wanted to know how Python is built so that I can build my own language someday. And that's what gave
Mm.
shape to Rewind, which I'm
Yeah.
building a programming language for kids. If I never went through that source code, how would I be in a position to build my own programming language? Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, so that's one of the things that I really want. I want something like it's my way. Like I post those things because it's my way of inspiring people that hey, we need to know the internal so that we can create a revolutionary technology out of India.
Yeah.
Like I would really want that to happen someday, and not just we being consumer of fancy frameworks that people from the Europe or basically people from the West write.
True.
I don't want that to happen. I want React to come out of India. I want
Exactly.
I want in something like Nginx, something like a brand new C compiler coming out of India. I want something fancy coming out of India rather than just
Yeah.
we creating how to tutorials, how to use React.
Yeah.
Let's build our own React. Like that's what I see.
True. I agree. I agree. At work, like I also saw this new language called Pylang.
Python. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
basically that's a pretty solid attempt.
Yeah.
Uska usability is out of question. It's a
Yeah.
meme language, but
Yeah.
it's a
But it's
solid
a
attempt on
time to.
making people understand that it's not hard to build your own
Mm,
programming language.
right.
If you go to the source code, you'll see how nicely they have hacked
Mm,
their solution. Obviously, they've not built entire thing into it, but
yeah.
the way they've hacked it, it's pretty interesting. Right?
Exactly.
But that is a good start. And when
True.
you scale it up to build something very profound, why not?
Yeah, yeah. I was also going through your essay where you were talking about, C Python thing. Like you just report
Yeah.
that, it's a fork that repo and just started changing the assignments, like randomly choosing instead of plus, you choose minus, multiply. So
Yeah,
then you
that
understand
was
a lot
the
of things.
first algorithm, first change I ever did to just test
Yeah,
key if I know what I'm doing. Yeah, that's the
yeah,
first step that I took.
yeah. And then you talk about changing grammar, right? So then the
Yeah,
grammar came into picture, the compiler designing came into picture, then theory of computation comes into picture, right? So interesting.
correct. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Let me go to uh, one interesting question. It's my personal question. I want to understand. How do you approach when you plan for internal deep dives?
Achha.
Nah.
So as you actually you just spoke about it. Like I
Okay.
pick something that I can change and see on my local machine. For example, C Python was one of that example. When it was easy for me to set up locally, I can change the source code, recompile, and see it work. So I tried going deep into basically the V8 engine, जिसके ऊपर basically Node.js runs, which is built on top of V8 engine. So I tried to modify V8 engine, but it was hard for me to basically get it compiled and get it running on my local machine. Right. So that's where I pick something that I'm very comfortable in setting up and exploring part of it. So that's first step. So it depends on what I would want to pick. The things which is easy for me to set up locally is what I pick.
Mm,
Once I pick that up and once I made a basic hello world change in it to see ki everything is working, then I start going through it
okay.
step by step. So I pick one very silly thing to just start with. Maybe just
Right.
adding a printf into the code.
Printf. Yeah.
Because that basically builds the confidence.
Exactly.
Right. And then I pick up problem statements which seem random but small enough that I would get an understanding. Like as you said, the first thing I ever did when I downloaded C Python and built it is first I add hello world to it and it worked.
Mm,
So all good. Then next thing I know a like 2 plus 2 happens. What if I do 2 plus 2 pay? I do 2 minus 2 and I output 0.
mm,
It would give me basic understanding of how operation arithmetic works in Python.
right.
While doing that, while we do that, what I would get an understanding for is because if I pick a big enough problem statement on day zero, I would be so overwhelmed by the information that I get. I would not be able to
Exactly.
make any progress.
Yeah.
So breaking it into smaller, manageable subtasks is very important. Just take one baby step at a time. Even when I am building Rewind, I just have one goal in mind to make Chrome Dinosaur game in it.
Mhm.
Whatever it takes for me to reach there is what I'm
Yeah.
doing. So breaking that into small
Small
pieces.
parts.
Now I've handled collision of two objects.
I saw.
Now next up would be instead of adding that rectangle, I will add actual dinosaur photo.
Yeah.
Basically the dinosaur's image and
And
the tree image in that. So
yeah.
that basically that's my next step of evolution.
Right.
So I
Right.
believe in the things to go grow organically and with
Yeah.
evolution. So go step by step. Don't directly jump onto, no, I just want to write my own Git. First, understand, take one baby step,
Mm,
break it down into smaller part, and then approach. Otherwise, you'll get lost, to be
yeah.
really honest. Because
I think
open
you're
source code bases like this are massive.
true. And I think you're almost done with your rewind. I saw you have done with the
Yeah,
jump, with the collision,
yeah. Jump
left,
bump is all
right,
done. Yes,
everything is done.
yes,
Yeah, I saw
yes,
that.
yes.
So, why do you have so much interest in Python and Golang? I think I may know this question. And as an SRE, you have to have this Swiss
Mhm.
tool with you. But any specific reason for you? Like you also deep dive into
My
C
Python,
Python.
my love for I was a hardcore Java developer till 2018.
Okay.
Hardcore Java. But then I switched to Python like I knew Python a bit before that, but my reason for working in Python is because it gives me that flexibility to like basically quickly build tools. Java pay like the my I'm not a big fan of Java because Java pay you don't focus on business logic, you focus on naming your class right.
Okay.
You spend more time thinking about the class name versus writing the business logic. Python may when I start writing Python ka code, yeah, I don't have to think about what's the name of my class. I can just start doing things that matters to me. Right. So focusing more on business logic. So that's what like whenever I want to do a quick prototype, I would always do it in Python. Always. So that's how Python came into my world. And then about Golang, again, pretty simple. Golang is the most performant language out there. Like basically one of the most performant languages out there. Concurrency of Golang is massive. So
Okay.
whenever I want to write performant code, whenever I want to write a code which is fast enough, I'll always prefer Golang. So all of my prototype that requires multi-threading, which was typically restricted to Java threads, but I don't want to use Java. By using C++, I don't want to go into the world of P threads and all because too long. So Golang sits in that sweet spot, which is more Pythonish, where I don't want to worry about class names and object patterns and low-level design patterns, while I still get the best of basic concurrency, mutexes, semapers, and whatnot to
Right.
get my things up and running. So when I was building my load balancer, I wrote it on Golang because concurrency by default. If I would have used Node.js or something, I would have to take care of acha event loop, acha callback, and whatnot, making it hard to understand. Golang is basically very sequential language, just like Python, just like C++. So easy to understand, but still performant at the same time.
Right. Thank you for that. Uh, there is one question from live audience, Ryan. He asked, "What is the interview process for SRE role at an academy? Do they hire freshers or people with 1 year experience? Please, can you brief about it?"
Directly into SRE, mostly no, because SRE is something that you would need to be a little experienced with. Making simple, especially at unacademy. But how if basically someone is I built my team out of freshers. I built my SRE team out of freshers, and I'm so proud of them. The way they have coped up. So mostly any like the campus hiring is through what we get freshers in, and from that we like I might pick a few for my team. That's the plan. So, but no explicit hiring for freshers in SRE. So anyone who comes through campus and all, the way we have our campus drive, we ingest those people into we basically distribute them across multiple teams. So few of
Understood.
them will definitely join SRE.
Understood. Uh, there's another question from Vishal. He's asking, "Are you going alone, build frameworks, or sometime planning to take up a big project and collab?"
As in big framework.
Yeah, so he's asking, alone build framework or sometime planning to take up a big project and collab. Oh, so I think he's asking, maybe he's asking, are you going
I'm
to
building a lot
work
of
alone?
small things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking for collaboration, but what I've seen is whenever I'm starting to collab, people have a very high motivation at first, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
I've had so many people reach out to me saying, "Hey, I want to write articles for a newsletter. Hey, I want to build Git with you. I want to build Revive with you." I start them. I spend time giving them walkthrough. They all vanish.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's hard for replicate the same kind of motivation that I have. I
True.
don't mind. I'm more than happy to have people working with me on a big project. Like for example, my vision, my long-term goal, like while like till I'm 70, like that long-term goal is I want to create an Apache-like umbrella of
Okay.
all open source projects
Well,
and
that's great.
host it.
That's
Like
a huge.
Apache or like people use Apache's project, they trust Apache umbrella. Similar to that, I want to build an umbrella myself.
Okay. Is
Where
it the
and
Indian
there a
based?
lot of but it's like not just Indian based, but really some really solid projects coming out of
Okay.
it. For
Yeah.
example, something which is as performant as Nginx, acting as a reverse proxy, you can use it on production grade software, and not just limited to India.
True.
All over the world, people can collab. But that's my vision. That's what I would want to build.
Well, that's good.
Maybe sometime. Like that's my vision of collaboration. That the level of collaboration I want to do. So to
That is good.
start with, Git is first thing that I'm starting with to
Mm.
just lay the foundation.
Yeah.
Like once I've laid the foundation, it is easy to compound on top of it. So
Mm.
I'll have to do a lot of heavy lifting. That's where rewind
Mm.
is there. Someone thinking of building programming
Mm.
language. So it's my way of saying that, hey, what looks impossible to you is not really that difficult. If I can do it, so can you. So once I have a, a big enough set of people who are interested, for sure I want to do collab, because obviously
True.
one person cannot build everything.
Exactly, that is true. That is true. I was also saying in the comment section when you announced about Git, people were asking, "Hey, I also want to do. Do you go? Are you going to open source it? Are you going to allow
Yeah,
people to
that's
collaborate?" Yeah.
going to be open. That's going to be open source for sure. But it's just
True.
that motivation is high, then suddenly it drops. That's the
Yeah.
problem. So many people coming in and then going off, so it's just waste of my time. So if anyone watching is really interested into working with me, just drop me a DM. More than happy to have you, but there should be some progress on that. Just because out of motivation, don't feel. Uh,
Yeah. This I also want to talk about. Like, people are mainly, learning frameworks, not software
mm,
engineering. I
yeah,
was also talking
yeah,
about it, like why you are like you're giving your tag that you are a React developer, you are a Angular developer, or you are a Spring Boot developer, or you are an API developer. Why don't you, learn the fundamentals? And because maybe today is React, tomorrow is different framework, right? And you are
correct,
just
correct,
out of picture. So yeah,
correct.
I also talk about learn the fundamentals, learn how things are built, and the way you are
Yes.
talking about like how you can go and build programming language or Git or something else. So that's really
Yeah.
great. And then that reminds me of your system designing master class. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
what is it all about?
It has been 1 year. I never imagined I would be continuing something for 1 year. That to teaching
Okay.
people. I love teaching people. I used to love, like, I my first venture into teaching was because I wanted GATE scholarship. Like, while I was studying in Triple IT Hyderabad, the idea
Okay.
was that I was an MTech student. For us to get GATE scholarship of 12,000 rupees, no, 8,000 rupees a month back then,
Oh.
we had to either be we had to be a teaching assistant for a course. So that's where I had no option. I wanted at 8,000 rupees. So that's why I became a TA in a subject called Advanced Problem
Mm.
Solving, in which we
Mm.
talk about, like, the lead code and code check wale problem statements we give.
Mm.
We teach people how to do it. That was my first one. And I realized that, hey, I am a good I'm a good teacher. I can, because my fundamentals are clear. I can spark curiosity. That's what education, basically, that's what teaching is all about. So
Yeah.
then one fine day, after so many years of contemplating, 2nd of February 2021 is when I took that plunge. Ki, Chalo, let me announce my course and see what happens. So I used to write a lot before that, and that's how I started that course. And I put in all sorts of interesting. I just compressed my 9 years of work ex into this course. Like, the kind of things I go into, like, we built our own load balancer. I went through the actual source code of load balancer to see how it is built. We went into very depth of database locking. Why optimistic lock? Why? And I was so happy people posting on social platform that they are now curious enough that they would explore database locking over the weekend. I'm like
True.
so happy, because something that people neglect as part of their fundamentals. Hey, people just say crud, 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 right. But going into that depth, going into that low level nitty gritties of it, I just
True.
cover them all with massive spectrum. So
Yeah.
that's the course is all about. Not for Definitely not intended towards interview preparation, but just being a better engineer in general.
Yeah.
So that's what my audience is. I've been fortunate that the median years of work ex that people join in is
Yeah.
4.5 something. That
Yeah.
it's more inclined towards senior engineers wanting to up their
Yeah.
game. So a lot of fun discussions
True.
around dissecting systems and
Yeah.
building a lot of things on our own.
Yeah. I also agree with you. And I once read this quote by Richard Feynman. He was a physicist. So he said, like, if you can't explain something to, a student, you haven't,
Yeah,
understood it. So it's really good. And I also teach because of a selfish reason. Like, I teach and I learn. So
yeah,
it's
exactly,
really good thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your recent videos are also about more into databases. Like you are looking into, I think I saw your essay like on all the properties, ACID, acid properties, and then I was looking into MongoDB. Then a lot of things you are talking about databases. Is it because you are part of data engineering in an academy, or
No,
is
no,
this
no, no, no.
personal?
The reason is if you see my essays that I wrote before was all about advanced algorithms
Mm.
around, let's say, a field like steganography, pseudo random number generation, and
Mm.
whatnot. I did not get any traction on that. I'm like,
Okay.
I'm dissecting massive research papers,
Acha.
showing them how to implement it, but I'm not seeing any traction. And I
Mm.
post random stuff about database and I'm seeing traction. It's purely
Okay.
out of traction that people want to consume content like this. So that's what I'm giving them. But in general, what I'm also trying to do is when I'm talking about it, I'm still going into depth. Like for example, very soon, last week, the 3 videos I posted was how indexes make database faster.
Mm.
People know indexes make database faster, but how? Right.
Oh.
So I'm still quenching my uh, overall curiosity around the topic, still making people understand what asli engineering is. Go into
Mm.
the depth, understand those parts, not just see ki, ha, I'll just create an index. Understand how it works. So
Right.
I'm still touching upon the internals of it. I'm still touching upon the basic nitty-gritties of it.
Mm.
Uh, but purely talking more about it. But I have a lot of other contents as well. But revolving around the topic of designing systems is what I've seen people really interested in. So
Right.
just talking about. But in between, I'll still post about pseudo random number generation, persistent data structures.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite topics, approximation algorithms and all.
Yeah.
But that would be there. But more frequently, it would be more around designing systems and understanding those basic nitty-gritties that
Yeah.
people don't really talk.
True. I think you answered my next question, like why you use Asli engineering all the time. I think this is all about Asli engineering. Yeah.
Yeah, SRE engineering. Like it's not just about writing CRUD. It's more so
Yeah.
about going into the depth. That's what real systems is built about. Like people talk about system design, they split it into
Mm.
microservices. That's so level one, where you just split it into microservices. System design is much, much, much more than that. Where you
Right.
want to understand, like understanding database locking is also part of system. Okay, how will you ensure very high throughput? Why no one is talking about it? So that's
Mm.
where one fine day I was very frustrated. Ki, "Arey, why is so much of mediocre content on YouTube? Let me pull it." So that's why I use
Yeah.
Asli engineering so
Right.
that basically people at least resonate with it. Yeah, something
True.
like I talk about building languages, C,
Mm-hmm.
Python, NT types, and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's what real engineering is all about. It's not just
Yeah.
learning a framework; it's also exploring the depth of it. That's what engineer
Mm.
does, and not a developer,
True.
right? So just putting my BTech degree and MTech degree to use.
Yeah. So Vishal Verma messages that his appreciation that's very awesome to do RC analysis for tech fails like Spotify that you have done
Yeah.
recently. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I did that. Yeah, basically
True.
try to keep an eye, basically keep a close eye on all the systems out there. In case any one of you know, just drop your message. More
Yeah.
than happy to create a video. And
Yeah.
that's where it's all about that because that's the part of SRE. Someone who is on call would have experienced that.
Mm.
You learn more when there is an outage
Yeah.
versus when everything is working fine.
Yeah. My
So
friend,
that's
he's
why
he's
don't
my
be shy
friend
of working.
Vishal. Vishal is my friend, so he was on call and he did something, and so he's interested, to learn more about
Yeah,
on calls and what happens with the outages. Anyways, there's one question, like since you're talking about in your recent essays that you read through research papers and then you dig out the algorithm and then you explore it and then you talk about in
yeah.
your essays. So Preet Mungra asked, how do you read research paper properly?
I don't. I don't. I like. Let's say if basically there's a paper of 5 pages, I can only understand first 3 pages because those are simple ones.
Mm,
As soon as math starts, I just run away from it.
okay.
But while reading that, just just understand the idea, the picture of
Mm,
it. Try to implement it. That's what I do.
mm,
Like I just don't read paper.
mm,
If let's say I talk about pseudo random number generation using a particular algorithm
mm,
from the research paper, I would just try to understand that algorithm, but while reading that paper, also write a basic prototype of it.
mm.
That is really essential. Otherwise, it's all theoretical knowledge.
Right.
Putting it into practice because the person who has written that paper would have also implemented it. Now, matlab it is implementable.
Yeah, yeah.
So then implement it, write a product, you'll get a far deeper understanding. Like
True.
uh, I wrote about anomaly detection using isolation forest.
Mm,
That is such a simple algorithm,
mm,
but when it comes about anomaly detection, people don't know how to do it. Go through that research paper. I implemented it myself, and then it realized that it was so simple to
Same
implement an
simple,
isolation
yeah.
like anomaly detection. So
Yeah.
I just always have a code editor. on which as soon as I'm building my understanding, I start writing it, I start coding it
Yeah,
to build a deeper understanding. That's
true.
the idea.
I'll also add one more thing over here. Like if you're going through a research paper, you if go through it once, just skim through it. If you're not, understanding everything, it's okay. Try again,
That's
try
okay.
again, try again. That's what,
Five
like,
times.
yeah, I think that's what happens with a large code base. When you enter a company, you see a lot of codes, and then you are confused, like how can I connect everything? You go slowly, you understand your
Yeah.
part, right? Like what this part is doing, and then what other part is doing, and how you connect everything, right? That's what research papers are as well. Like you just don't have to go through all of them. Just go through one part, one part, one part, and connect everything with.
Yeah.
And it will
It
take time,
typically takes me 5 reads of a research paper to
yeah,
understand it. But every time you'll form few dots. With every read, you'll basically forming a solid connection between them. So you
right,
have to read 4 or 5 times. But while prototyping, that is more important.
yeah.
Don't
While
just read, read,
prototyping,
read.
exactly,
You
yeah,
might have to take notes, might be prototyping or something
exactly.
to form a solid understanding.
Sanket Jaswal is asking, Arpit, do you have any plan to do the SRE course for cohort?
No, no, not
I
really,
don't think
because
there is a SRE course.
I'm not really as good as an engineer, as good as an SRE engineer,
Okay.
because SRE, like I've just set up a team, I've built a team, I know basic part of it, but I'm not an excellent someone who can teach you AWS or how to
Acha.
manage infrastructure and all,
Hmm.
because it's very specific. Because SRE is, as I said,
Hmm.
it's such a big domain that you cannot cover it in
Hmm.
one course. Like
Right.
it's like doing AWS certification. But talking in abstract, building that intuition is what I'm really good at. So
Yeah.
basically, designing systems is my forte. I would not want to venture into something that is not my forte. Like if I'm
Coin.
not really good at
Yeah.
it, really, really good at it, I would never
Yeah.
teach it to anyone.
Coin Sanket, you can come to me. I'll teach SRE on my YouTube channel.
Uh,
But yeah, that is true actually, Sanket. With like if you're talking about same thing, like we were talking about like being Sherlock Holmes in tech, so you can't be Sherlock Holmes on, I mean, just on reading some doc or something. It has to be your own thing in desire. Like I have to learn this, learn this, learn this. Open this box. What is happening? Close this box again. Something like that, right? So you have to
mm,
understand what's the engineering inside. So just go open operating system. Go open any like a simple C++ code. What is happening behind it? Like when you're compiling it, when you're running it, what is loader?
it's a
What
very
is what is assembler? What how does everything loads into the memory, right? And then it
yeah,
fetches all the operations and understand like what is particular operation is. The same thing is working on your Intel CPU. It's not working on some other CPU. The same thing is working on Mac. Something is not working on Linux. Not working on Windows. Why it is happening? Just go and understand. A lot of things are there, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Very personal question now. So since you're very senior to me and you have a lot of experience in the industry already, and I am new to the industry, so how can I grow? Or let me rephrase this question: like, how can people like me who were a student before, now they are in industry with 1 year or 2 year experience and they want to grow more? So, what's your suggestion?
Deliver results. That's it.
Hmm.
Always optimize for delivering results.
Acha.
Because if you just focus on that, you'll automatically become a better engineer
Hmm.
because you're optimizing for results. You'll automatically become a better employee because you're delivering results.
Right.
You'll automatically become curious enough because you might want to find hacks or you might want to do deep dive to deliver that sort of result.
Hmm.
So it is not just optimizing your growth in your career, but also as an engineer, try to deliver something. Like for example, as an engineer, I'm trying to build Rewind. What's my result out of it?
Hmm.
Building a wilderness object,
Yeah.
right?
True.
If I'm an engineer working in a company, what's my outcome? Let's say reducing a response time of an API by let's say 20%. To do
Hmm.
that, I would want to do XYZ. So if there is
Hmm.
one thing that you should definitely be focused on is be result driven. Like
Yeah.
you should be obsessed by, don't think what I want to do.
Hmm.
Think what you want to achieve out of it. So focus on outcomes, and then you basically work backwards and see ki acha kya karna hai.
Right.
Don't do ki
Right.
kya karna hai, what would be the outcome. Think ulta. Like I
Hmm.
made this mistake quite a bit in my career, that I was thinking, hey, I want to do A, B, C, D, E without thinking of outcome. And then
Hmm.
eventually I said, I've done all of this, but what's the outcome of it? That's where
Right.
I flipped it I flipped it the other way. That's where every single thing that I do is more towards okay, this would be my outcome, and this is what I would want to do to achieve that.
Correct, correct. Thank you. How do you manage time? Like, you are doing a lot of things in an academy. You have set up the SRE team, so you must have like a lot of responsibilities. And then you are doing this master class. Then you are deeping into deep diving into internals of Gate, Rewind. So a lot of things you are doing. So how are you managing your time? Like, do you have more than 24 hours?
Round robin, round robin, round
Round
robin.
robin.
I've just
Acha.
allocated time for everything. Like
Uh,
I have, if I ever want to work on Rewind, it will only be on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I'll
Acha.
not put in Thursdays and Fridays on that.
Mm,
I blocked my calendar, like not
mm,
office calendar, but my personal calendar. So I have two machines, one for personal work, one for office work. I never
Acha.
log in office account on personal machine. I never log
Mm,
in personal account on office machine. So
mm.
clear separation of
Okay.
concerns there. This
Mm.
way, when I switch machines, I'm actually switching myself from one mode to another mode. So
Right.
no other distractions coming my way.
Take it.
Then
Okay.
blocking time is very important. Giving out time like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning 6 a.m. to 6 only 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. is when I record YouTube videos.
Mm.
Tuesday, Thursday morning 7 to 9 a.m. I prepare for the next videos and
Mm.
anything around that. So all the work that I do for my YouTube is always wrapped in the first few hours of my day, and then my office starts. So from 10:30 to 6:30 something.
Mm.
Post 6:30, I have my one-on-one sessions. So everything is accounted for in my calendar. Plus, I have a small baby which I have to take care of. So I know where to
Okay.
slot that
Yeah.
thing in my calendar. Kya, this is when I will basically take her for a walk. This is when I'll feed her or something like that.
Mm.
All of that is accounted for. And then
True.
I go back at 11 or 12 something.
Well,
So
that's good.
entire day.
So viewers, he does not have more than 24 hours. He is similar to us. So we can do the same thing. We can, separate our time, do the round robin fashion. So do not come to me also like, hey, how I can manage time? How can I am an SD. I need to learn SRE. So you can take inspiration from Arpit. He is doing a lot of things
Just
in the 24
progress.
hours.
Make progress. Some progress,
Yeah,
but make it. Just
true.
don't just be stagnant. Thoda karte.
Yeah. What are these truth bombs that you drop on Twitters?
I've been doing that for 3 years now, almost about to complete 1,000 one-liners.
Okay.
Never imagined that.
Yeah.
I think a lot,
Yeah.
a lot, a lot. Like every single
Mm.
thing, I just cannot switch this off for
Mm.
some reason. So whenever I observe, I have an opinion. So I used to write bluntly earlier. Then people used to say, "Ki, Arey, why are you insulting me?" So then I made it a little more ambiguous.
Okay.
Ki, even if I want to tell someone, I don't tell it like bluntly to people. I just make it ambiguous and short and crisp,
Mm.
and which I put it out. So most of them, most like 80-85% of them have come from my
Yeah.
own experiences
Mm.
because something kuch na kuch hote rehta. It's just that I'm very
Mm.
observant about things. So I just make a note of it,
Yeah.
try to make it as concise as possible, and I just drop it.
We should be
That's
an
the
awesome. True. Yeah. I think it's almost more than 50 minutes. So we can go for the last message to people who are watching us. Any last
last
message?
message to people. Uh, be very curious, no matter what.
Mm.
Yeah, don't think of, be outcome driven while being
Mm.
curious. Because if you're not curious, you'll stagnate,
Yeah.
you'll be frustrated, you'll not be happy in your personal life.
True.
Curiosity gives you happiness, to be really
Mm.
honest, because it gives you that kick. Like the kick that you typically get by smoking or drinking. Although I don't
Mm.
endorse that, even I don't smoke or drink,
Mm.
but people say that they get kick out of it.
Mm.
You get a bigger kick, to be really honest, when you're curious enough. Like when
Mm.
I wrote my first load balancer, when it worked, I ran at all places I could to show that, see, I built my load balancer. They didn't
I
understand
can
the
relate.
thing.
Yeah, I
Like,
can.
I told it to my parents, I told it to my in-laws. They didn't understand, but I was so happy to. And
Yeah.
that is the biggest thing that you ever get. Like building your own load balancer, building your own program,
Mm.
enough, and you cracked it. This
Yeah.
is how it works.
Yeah.
That's the best feeling. So you get that kick.
True.
That is my dopamine addiction. I
Yeah.
get kicks from exploring internals. I get kicks
Yeah.
from knowing how it works. Yeah,
True.
that's my thing. And be curious. That's one thing that you should do. And be outcome driven. Don't
True.
just be curious, learn without something. You'd seem it is a futile exercise.
True.
Translate your curiosity into outcome,
Mm,
or rather decide an outcome and then find ways to do it. And while doing
mm,
that, basically quench your curiosity around it. Right.
true.
So that's one advice that I would got.
True. I also learned from you Arpit today in the morning. So guys, I am very sorry. I was I set my time at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, and I thought there's a time difference, change of time difference, and I wake up late. And he called me to tell, hey, it's already time. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry, guys, for doing that. I may have my sound was not audible in the start, so I'll just introduce Arpit again. So he is a very senior to me, and he used to work with Practo as an SD on platform engineering. Now he's working. He also worked with Amazon as an SD2. Now he's working as an engineering manager on SRE and data engineering with an academy, right? And he also writes a lot of interesting things on his blogs. I'll just put the link, and if you want to go through his system designing masterclass, you can always go on check on his uh, website is arpitbhayani.me. I just put all the links in the description as well, or in the LinkedIn post when it's coming up. Thank you guys for connecting. Thank you, Arpit, so much to connecting with us and sharing all the
Thanks,
experiences.
Raul.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Raul.
Okay.
Always a pleasure.
Bye bye.
Nice.
Until then.
Chat.
Bye bye.
Bye.